Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Financial Aid Award Letter Live event. We hope that you leave this event with a better understanding of what to look for in your own award letters. I am Ashley Davis. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a third-year college advisor, but a first-year virtual advisor. I am a 2016 graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, and I finished with a communications degree.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiara Shade. I also use she, her pronouns, and I also graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2016 with a major in psychology and a minor in religious studies, and I'm a third-year virtual advisor. We also have a special guest joining us tonight. So this is Ruva. He's a former CAC student, so I'll pass the mic to him so that he can introduce himself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruva. I'm a first-year student at Vassar College. And like Kiara said, I was in your shoes last year, class of 2020 for high school, and I'm here to share my thoughts with you guys. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm thinking of majoring in econ and math.
Thank you, Ruva. We're so happy to have you with us tonight. A little bit about CAC. The mission of the College Advising Corps is to increase the number of low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students in higher education. Our team of virtual advisors work with the College Point Initiative, which is supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies. College Point is a virtual advising program that helps high-achieving, low to moderate income students navigate the entire college application process for free.
So now let's jump right into material tonight. So we'll begin by defining need-to-know terms with a quick video, followed by a quick pause for questions. And then we'll walk through a sample award letter from 2019. And after this, Ruva will share his student perspective on this process, followed by a brief Q&A session to wrap up. So if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to post them into the Q&A section, not the chat, the Q&A section, and we'll address them during designated times throughout the webinar. You may also see responses from Warner Lambeth and Shelby Ware in the chat as well. These are colleagues from our advisor team here to help us respond to questions as they come in.
Before we get started, we're going to put a document in the chat outlining the key definitions that we'll go over in the video. Feel free to follow along with us and also save the document for later. And it should now be in the chat. Actually, hold on, let's see. Okay, it should now be in the chat.
Perfect, so let's go ahead and get started and jump right into the video.
Understanding award letters can be confusing. In this video, we're going to go over common terms that will help you better understand your own award letters. Let's get to it. Award letters, sometimes also called aid packages and financial aid offers, are offered to students who have been admitted to the university and applied for financial aid. Cost of attendance. The estimated total cost of attending your college for one academic year. This includes both your direct costs and your indirect costs. Direct costs. What shows up on your actual bill, your tuition and fees, plus your room and board. Indirect costs. Anything you don't directly pay the college for, but you anticipate spending. Gift aid. Money that does not have to be repaid, such as scholarships and grants. The Federal Pell Grant is a grant given to students who demonstrate exceptional financial need and whose EFC falls below a certain threshold. Federal SEOG Grant. The Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is additional money given to students who demonstrate exceptional financial need.
Now let's talk about borrowed money. A loan is money you can borrow to eventually be repaid with interest. Every FAFSA eligible student is eligible to receive federal student loans, and repayment begins 6 months after you graduate, but there's no penalty for making early payments. A federal direct subsidized loan is given based on financial need. It does not accrue interest while you're in school, and typically the maximum amount awarded for this type of loan is $3,500 for your freshman year. A federal direct unsubsidized loan is available regardless of financial need. It starts accruing interest the day it's dispersed into your account, and the maximum amount awarded for this type of loan is $2,000 for your freshman year. A federal Parent Plus loan is money that your parent may borrow to help you pay for college. The loan is in their name, they must be approved through a credit check, and repayment begins immediately. We mentioned the main types of federal loans, but you should also know that there are private loan options. Private loans are money borrowed from a bank or third-party lender. These tend to have higher interest rates and sometimes less flexible repayment options than federal loans. Last but not least, let's talk about other important terms and definitions to know when you're reviewing your aid letters. Federal Work Study is a federally funded program that allows you to work part-time as an employee on your college campus. You'll receive an earned paycheck throughout the year, typically used for indirect costs. A financial aid appeal process allows you to take action to appeal your financial aid offer in order to request additional funding or full reconsideration of an aid offer. You'll undergo an official appeal if you've encountered special circumstances like a family death or job loss that prevents you from meeting your estimated bill. And you'll undergo an unofficial appeal if there's simply a gap in your aid package. What's a gap? A gap is your unmet need. This occurs when there is a significant difference between your estimated bill and your EFC, which was your expected family contribution estimated by the information in your FAFSA. Always refer to your EFC when evaluating your award letter. For more terms and definitions, check out the glossary over at the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators.
We want to pause here to see if there are any questions before we move on. All right. Now that you're aware of a few key terms that you will see as you review your own financial aid packages, let's transition to what an actual financial aid package looks like and how to determine whether or not an offer is affordable for you and your family. Okay, this is an example of a student award letter from the class of 2019. This student most likely received the letter 3 weeks after their acceptance. This is a typical time frame to receive aid offers, but of course, this varies from school to school as financial aid offices are very, very busy during this time of year. The letter includes the college name, plus the amounts and types of financial aid offered. This makes it possible for you to get an estimate of what your out-of-pocket costs will look like should you attend this school. This particular letter is unique because it includes a lot of helpful, rare finds and additional information. To the right, you can see the college graduation rate, a repayment rate, median loan borrowing information, and it even defines terms toward the end. You can also see that many of the terms we defined in the previous video show up in this letter. So it's best to get familiar with them so you'll have a better understanding when it comes to your own offers. Lastly, keep in mind that award letter templates may look different from school to school. So it's nice to use a comparison tool like the one we'll show you shortly, so you can make an informed and affordable decision by May 1st. And this is CAC's award letter comparison tool. Once you schedule an award letter meeting with your advisor, they'll walk you through a similar tool so that you can compare your own aid packages side by side. Something nice about this tool is that it's self-calculating and it provides a standard means of comparison between each of your offers. For this next segment, we will input the student's aid package into the tool so you can have an example of what to look for when deciphering your own offers.
So first, let's input the cost of attendance into the tool. You'll see this in the top portion of this student's letter. So right here is what we're focusing on. Remember, the cost of attendance includes your direct costs, which are your tuition and fees plus your room and board, and your indirect costs, which are the personal expenses that you'll spend throughout the year that are not directly paid to the schools, such as books and transportation. So if we're determining direct costs in this particular student's letter, we first look at the tuition fees, which are about $11,000. And then we'll look at the room and board, sometimes called housing and meals, which are about $16,000. Remember, you will see these items listed on your actual bill that you'll receive from the school prior to matriculating. So I'll go ahead and insert these numbers into the tool. And in just a moment, you'll see how it is actually self-calculating at the bottom. There we go. And now we'll move on to indirect costs. So this is right here in this particular letter. The indirect costs are an estimate of what the school expects you to spend on personal items throughout the year. Sometimes schools will list this number in your aid package and sometimes they won't, but usually the estimates are between $1,000 to $3,000. So I'll also input those numbers. You can see these totals self-populate on lines 13 and 14 to get the total cost of attendance of about $28,000 on line 16, right there, which matches the total cost of attendance listed in the letter right here. Just a quick note, if the total cost of attendance is not listed or broken down in your letter, you'll need to Google that information on the school's website.
Now let's move on to gift aid. This is money that you do not have to pay back, and it can take the form of grants, which are given based on financial need, and scholarships, which are mostly awarded based on merit or an athletic ability, but some scholarships are also need-based. This particular student was awarded about $6,000 in the federal Pell Grant and about $5,000 in a New York State grant, the TAP grant. They were awarded these amounts because their household income fell within a certain criteria to demonstrate their financial need. Although this student wasn't awarded any additional scholarships from the school, they were gifted with a $2,000 school grant. If this student did receive school scholarships, it would be a great idea to ask the aid office if they were renewable over the next 4 years. Any outside scholarships that this student receives would go into the final line to add to their total gift aid amount. Now is the time to apply to as many outside scholarships as possible to reduce your out-of-pocket costs. Some schools implement something called scholarship displacement. This is where schools will adjust your aid package if you receive outside scholarships. For example, if you receive an outside award of $5,000, the school may reduce your financial aid package by $5,000. Check with your school's website or financial aid offices to see if they engage in this process. Not all schools do. Lastly, some students are notified of a scholarship award before their actual aid package arrives. So keep that in mind if you're unsure whether or not you've received your full offer.
Perfect. So now we'll transition to federal loans. This is money that has to be repaid with interest. So every student who is eligible to complete the FAFSA is eligible for the 2 loan amounts that you see listed here in this letter. So we see $3,500 in subsidized loans. Remember, these loans do not accrue interest while you are in school. So I'll input that into this section. And we also see $2,000 offered in unsubsidized loans. So remember, these do begin accruing interest the moment that they are dispersed into your account. And before we move on, I want to say 3 quick facts about loans. So number 1, you are not required to make payments on these student loans until 6 months after you graduate. However, there's no penalty for making early payments if you choose to do so. Number 2, you do not have to take out the full amount of loans listed in your offer. It's only recommended that you borrow what you need to pay for your direct costs. And lastly, number 3, which was also mentioned in the video, if you come across a Federal Parent Plus loan in your aid package, keep in mind that that loan is the money that your parents may borrow on your behalf. They'll have to be approved for this loan via a credit check, so any amount listed in your letter is not guaranteed. And unlike federal student loans, Parent Plus loans have higher interest rates, the repayment begins immediately, and repayment is solely the parent's responsibility. So make sure that you talk with your parents first to see what they're able to afford before going with this loan option.
Remember, the purpose of an award letter is to evaluate your estimated bill to see whether it's affordable for you and your family. Looking at line 47, this student has an estimated bill of about $7,000, about $3,500 per semester. Recall that this number was calculated by taking the direct costs and subtracting the gift aid and the loans. Here you can see the student's estimated bill if she decides to borrow loans, and her bill if she does not decide to borrow. Keep in mind that this number represents her estimated out-of-pocket costs for one academic year. So to get a better estimate of what your total college expenses may look like, you will multiply this number by 4 years. Now let's briefly touch on affordability. This will vary from family to family. When determining whether or not an aid package is affordable, always refer back to your EFC, your expected family contribution. Your EFC was determined based on the information you put into the FAFSA and is located on your student aid report. Log into your FAFSA account to view this. Back to the student. If this student's EFC was $5,000, an out-of-pocket cost of about $7,000 would likely be affordable because the estimated bill is within $2,000 of the student's EFC. Now, if her EFC was $0, an out-of-pocket cost of $7,000 may not be affordable because the estimated bill is more than $5,000 above her EFC. It's important to have a conversation with your family to visually compare your aid offers to see which schools are more affordable over others, and to discuss a payment plan to cover any out-of-pocket costs.
So the last thing that we'll mention before we transition to the next segment is work study. So work study is a federally funded program that allows students to work part-time for an on-campus job, such as a library, a CAF, a student union, student rec, anything of that nature. And if you're offered work study, you still have to apply for a position as you would any other job, and you'll be able to earn a bi-weekly paycheck to use at your own discretion throughout the year. Most students choose this option to cover their indirect costs, but some schools will allow you to take this money and apply it directly to your bill to help cover your direct costs. So you may want to check with the financial aid office to see if that's an option for you. This particular student was awarded $2,000 in federal work study to help with those indirect costs we mentioned earlier. So we've included this in a separate section in the tool because remember, you won't see these indirect costs listed in your student bill. So I'll insert that there, $2,000. And as you see, the student's indirect costs as predicted by the school should be covered with this work study award.
Okay, this was a lot of information. We would like to take another pause and see if there are any questions. And I know that there are some in the Q&A chat. Let's see. One question asked, once we are accepted, how long should it take for the award letter to be received? Great question. Usually about 3 weeks. This will vary from school to school. And I imagine just given the challenges surrounding COVID, it may take a bit longer this year. So if it's not 3 weeks, it's okay. If you are concerned, I would suggest reaching out to the financial aid office, just confirming that all is well and the college is not waiting for any additional information from you.
Great, so we have another question in the chat here. It says, what is work study exactly, and does that include co-ops and internships? So work study is awarded to a student based on their household income. So you have to fall within a certain level to be eligible for work study. And people that see work study in their packages, they are prioritized those on-campus jobs over students who do not have work studies. So just like a regular job, you'll still have to apply. You can work a certain amount of hours per week. And it does not include co-ops and internships. So that would be something completely separate than work study. I think later on in this webinar, Ruva will share a lot more information about that. So looking forward to that. So we also have another question here about an EFC. So here in the chat, we see that if my EFC was $3,000, but several schools requested an ex-husband's information, several of the schools have awarded tuition and fees, but now housing, these costs exceed the EFC. Is this because of her father's income? For that particular question, I would direct it to the financial aid office. They would probably be able to give you a more direct answer as to what criteria they're pulling from in order to determine what amount of aid that they're gifting. So later on, we'll also post into the chat some great questions to ask the financial aid office to get some specific answers for you there.
Okay, we have another question here. When it comes to federal loans, are they very common and recommended to students to take out? That's a really great question. I would say that they are common. Just in terms of a recommendation to take loans out, what I usually suggest or tell my students is that I do recognize that for some students, a loan can be the difference between attending college and not. So I definitely understand that. But my suggestion is to only take out a loan if you need it and only take out how much of the loan amount that you need. So I just do want to note that, let's say a school offers you $5,000 in student loans and you only need $2,000, I would only suggest taking out the amount that you need, because you can definitely determine before you accept the financial aid award how much of that loan you would like to take.
All right, I think we are going to answer the rest of the questions whenever we do our Q&A segment at the end of this webinar. So we're going to table them for now, just so we can make sure that we get all this content out to you all. So now we will continue with the next segment.
This concludes our walkthrough. We definitely hope that it was helpful to you all. We'll now take a few moments to ask Ruva some questions so you can all see what this process was like from a student's perspective. And then we'll shift gears for the Q&A session that Kiara mentioned, and we'll get your questions answered.
So thank you again for joining us tonight, Ruva. Let's jump right into these questions. So tell me, what's something that you wish you would have known before receiving your financial aid packages?
All right, so, well, you know, you always hear, read the fine print. Well, yeah, so that's exactly what you should do. There may be a section on your financial aid package that says special items to note, and that can consist of other direct costs, declining aid, work study, and loans. And the part that I want to emphasize is other direct costs. So there's tuition insurance, health insurance, and one-time fees for first-year students, which consists of a general deposit, which is different from the admission deposit, and a transcript fee. So though these amounts are not comparable to any significant portion of your bill, they can add up to upwards of $2,500. So you want to think about health insurance, especially if you plan on studying out of state, as an additional cost. And the other costs, although minimal, they can add up. So plan for this increase in your bill for the first semester at least. But this is not to say that you can't waive these costs. I was able to get my health insurance waived because I had comparable and enforceable health insurance in the New York State area, and my school was within my home state. And since I paid my tuition from scholarships and grants, I didn't really need to have tuition insurance. So I got that waived. And I talked to my financial aid office about the other costs on there, and they were able to help me. So, just ask the financial aid office to help you out if you really are struggling, and they'll try to do the best they can. And another thing, so each year as a student, you have an expected student contribution, and this doesn't like have anything to do with your parents' contribution. So this is like a bare minimum. And so each year, even if your parents make consistently the same amount of money for the 2 years prior to you attending college and the first 2 years of you attending college, your expected student contribution will gradually increase each year. So factor this in the long run, as you know, you'll be paying a little bit more each time you move up in grade level.
Thank you. You gave some really good advice, Ruva. Did you have any misconceptions about award letters before viewing them?
Yeah, absolutely. So for work study, well, I'm trying to get an understanding here of how you guys feel about it. So let me know in the chat if you also are confused about work study. So I guess for me, I just wasn't clear about it prior to entering my institution. The main word of advice I would say here is to not think of it as a scholarship or grants. In other words, do not deduct the amount that you see on your financial aid package under work study from your account balance. Think of it as like an actual job, right? Like, you know, the money goes directly to you, but not until you start working. So you have to apply to the job that you want on campus. And if you see work study on your package, it means, like Kiara said earlier, that you have priority in selecting a job. There are tons of fun jobs on campus, so apply quickly and apply to as many positions as possible. Don't forget to upload resumes and email supervisors so you can be a super strong candidate for your position. And work study is supposed to help you pay for indirect costs such as books, food, transportation, and etc. But halfway into the semester, I don't know like what books you might need. So, you know, just spend that money or save it wisely for next year's bill. And if you don't have work study on your financial aid package, that's okay too. You can get a campus job as soon as the financial aid office opens that up for the rest of the student body, so you can register for your position at that time.
Thank you. That leads me to another question that I had for you. Did you receive work study? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, I did receive work study. So I currently hold a work study position as a warehouse clerk assistant at Central Receiving at Vassar. And it's the best and most fun job I ever had. I scan in students' packages, I give them to students when they come, and I even make deliveries in a golf cart to professors. So, I really love my job, and my friends love theirs as well, as far as I know. And just like another note on this, the hours per week that you see on your financial aid package, like it might say like 7 or 8, that's just a suggestion. Like you can work more or less than that, however you're comfortable with. It's the amount of money that it says on your financial aid package that you can't exceed making over the course of an academic year. So whether it's like $3,000 or $3,200, you just can't make above that. So for me, sometimes I would go to work at 14 hours a week or sometimes 7. Just if I had more time, I would go to work more. And if not, then I balance it out.
So now let's transition for a moment. What was your process like as you compared your schools for affordability? I'm having trouble speaking tonight, clearly.
Me too, kind of. So, well, here's where we all want to thank our advisors, a special thanks for them. At the time, Kate, I don't know if any of you have her, she used a comparison tool to showcase all the schools that I was interested in attending and receive financial aid packages from. And she organized every component out in an easily legible way, as you probably seen earlier in the segments. From the out-of-pocket costs I would have to pay each semester, to the loan allotment per semester, even to how much I would have to pay monthly to repay my loans years into the future. It was all laid out in front of me. The numbers were easy to understand and it made my decision like so much easier and clearer. Essentially, at the end, there was 2 schools that were really good fits as far as financial aid went. One school actually had a no loan initiative, which meant that I wouldn't have to pay any loans in the future, and they were really dedicated to covering my costs through scholarships and grants or money that I didn't have to pay back. But the school I chose, Vassar College, had a very similar award letter, but it was a better fit for me socially, academically, and it's closer to home for me. So when the time comes, definitely express your gratitude to your awesome advisors for you to be able to see all this information clearly and help you make a decision that is the right fit for you based on affordability and as well as what your values are.
Excellent. Thank you for all of that. Our last question, did you find ways to offset the common costs while in college? So did you find ways to lower your textbook costs, renting books over buying books? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so well, one thing is like, don't purchase the textbook until, you know, you attend your first class. So you can like ask the professor if you actually need a textbook or if there's like an extra textbook lying around. Sometimes professors will be able to help you out with that if you need the money. So like last semester, I needed a textbook for one of my classes and I asked my professor, is there a way I can get this textbook from you or like any way I can reduce the cost? And he actually had an extra textbook lying around, so I got that for free. And another thing is like, don't purchase from the bookstore like new books. Like that's very unnecessary and you'll waste like so much money. Just get rented books if you can and used, and also look online for PDF versions because sometimes professors will also diverge from the textbook like a month in, so you might not need like the newest edition and all that. So definitely there's ways.
Yes, I learned that lesson the hard way as well. Do not purchase from the student stores immediately when you get to campus. So we want to extend a huge thank you again to Ruva for joining us tonight. I'm sure the class of 2021 is grateful to hear what this process was like from someone who was recently in their shoes. So thank you again. Now you all are welcome to ask Ruva any questions as we head into our Q&A session right now. So we'll open the floor to any questions. Remember, if your questions are super specific or personal, we'll encourage you to contact your financial aid offices for more direct support. So we'll post a bonus sheet in the chat right now of 50 great questions to ask the aid office that may be helpful to you. So a first question in the chat, I see, what is a good amount to pay for college or what is seen as a deal? So this question is coming from a first generation student who has no idea. I usually like to tell my students whenever you're gauging whether or not an aid package is good or bad, always refer back to that EFC. So if you see that you have an out-of-pocket cost or a gap between your EFC and your estimated bill of about $5,000 or higher, that may not be as affordable. Now, of course, that can vary from family to family, but try to think $5,000 to maybe $75,000 could be affordable. Anything over $10,000 may not be as affordable for you and your family. So always refer back to that EFC when you're trying to use, when you're trying to gauge an aid package.
I'm sorry, if I can chime in here. Someone asked the question, do you get the full amount of money from work study or does the work study money get taxed? So like I was saying earlier, you can make the full amount of money that you are allotted from your work study. It depends how much you work throughout the year. So you definitely can make more, but if you work a good amount like each semester, then you definitely can reach that amount. And the financial aid office can work with you to make sure that you reach that and don't surpass it. And as well as for getting taxed, it is taxed. So you will have some, tax withheld or not, but you will have to file this and your school will give you a W-2 form at the end of the academic year.
Okay, another question, what is tuition insurance? And if I'm not mistaken, I think you are talking about something that Ruva mentioned, which was about insurance kind of showing up as a line item for a cost associated with going to college. And that can be optional. That is an option if you do not have substantial insurance coverage, but you need that to attend college. You can go through your college and actually enroll insurance. But if you already have substantial insurance, that is something that you can cross off your bill that you will not need to purchase. Please feel free to drop another question in the chat if I did not answer the question that you were asking.
One more question here. So this person is located in California. Should the Cal Grant be specified as something different on the award letter? It should literally say California Grant or Cal Grant for your award letter. But just note that if you apply to any schools outside of California, you won't see the Cal Grant at all listed in your aid packages. So only for those California schools, it will be specified as Cal Grant. Oh, and it looks like we did not post the link for the 50 questions to ask the aid office, so we'll post that right now.
It should be in there now. Sorry about that.
Do you have any more questions for us? Don't be shy. Something I did want to mention before we head out, I don't know if you all remember, but we had something in the award letter comparison tool called the SEOG grant. That's just a supplemental grant that is prioritized for Pell Grant recipients. So the schools choose whether or not they want to award you with this grant based on your financial need, and you can receive anywhere between $100 to $4,000, but it's all up to the school's discretion.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, before we wrap up, we did just want to reiterate that in order to make sure you're eligible for, oh, hold on. I think there's one more question. Let me pause.
Ashley,
okay, the question is, yeah, sure. Is there a way to waive your health insurance plan for a college that is out of state? Yes, again, as long as you have substantial insurance that covers outside of state lines, it should be fine. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Kiera or everybody.
Yes, I believe that's correct. Okay. You can always waive your health insurance if you have health insurance already, but just be on the lookout for that over the summer, because I know, for instance, UNC had a deadline of, I want to say August or September, that I had to waive my insurance by. So just be on the lookout for that so you don't miss the deadline and you won't have to end up paying that money out of pocket.
Yeah, also some schools might have like a health insurance grant. So even if you don't have insurance that's like coverable for out of state, you can ask your financial aid office about that to see if you qualify. And that's usually based on like financial need. So yeah.
We have one more question here in the chat. How do I get in touch with financial aid offices? You can Google the school's name, dash financial aid, and it should pop up all their contact information. So phone, fax, email, all of that. It should be fairly easy to get in touch with the aid office. And some students may have a financial aid counselor that is specified exactly for them. So that may be an option as well. Any more questions before we wrap up? These are all great questions. Thank you all for your participation.
All right. Well, again, just to reiterate that in order to make sure you're eligible for the maximum amount of financial aid, the most important thing you can do for yourself is to complete your financial aid forms as early as possible. These forms include the FAFSA, CSS profile, if your school participates or requires that, and then also your TAFSA if you're a Texas student. If you haven't completed your forms, please make sure that you make this a top priority and then focus on your scholarships next. Also, just a reminder that if you have to complete your you do have to complete your FAFSA every single year that you're enrolled in college. So make sure that you remember your password information, write it down and store it in a safe place. Secondly, double check to see if you've been selected for FAFSA verification. If you have been selected for verification, your colleges will reach out to you for more information. Keep an eye on your email and then also your application portal. Delays in sending your school additional information could increase the time it takes for you to receive an accurate award letter.
So again, we want to say thank you all for joining us here tonight. Ruba, thank you again for taking time out of your busy college schedule to help answer these questions for our students. Please reach out to your advisor if you have additional questions, and make sure that you sign up for an award letter meeting with them soon so that they can share that unique tool with you to go over your financial aid packages. Thanks again, everyone.